Wano is over. 4 years of storytelling has officially concluded. And I'm at a bit of a loss for words, which isn't good, because saying words, it's kind of my whole thing. But after this conclusory chapter, I am a stone soup of emotions. I feel like there's a bit of everything. Satisfaction, hype, empathy, disappointment, surprise, bewilderment, and many, many more. But we are going to get smack bang into things, because we do have some new Straw Hats, sort of. But I don't think things played out quite how anyone expected, particularly with Yamato. I am legitimately shocked that Yamato didn't join the crew, because that's been Yamato's, honestly, like one defining character trait since introduction. The fact that Yamato desperately, and I mean desperately, wants to leave Wano and have a grand adventure at sea to live like Oden did. There was even that whole part after the raid where Yamato was like, yo, it's me, Yamato, your new crew member. And I guess it's not so much that it doesn't make sense, because I can think of at least one very, very good reason why Yamato maybe can't join the crew right now. But it's more that this feels like a very abrupt and, in my opinion, not particularly well explained shift. I mean, sure, let's accept the logic that Yamato wants to follow the path of Oden and thoroughly travel around Wano. Great. That'll take what, like a week at most? Wano is not that big of a country. So that week, maybe two if we really want to take our time, goes by, and then what? You're just trapped again, desperately waiting for someone to come and pick you up. Meanwhile, Luffy's probably effed off somewhere becoming the Pirate King already. So I don't know, something about this I don't buy. Something about this just feels a bit off. Because we are so late into the end game of One Piece that it really does feel like it's now or never. As for the good reason why Yamato maybe shouldn't join right now, that would be Oden's journal, because Yamato simply knows too much. And having someone like that aboard the ship could be problematic in terms of maintaining the mystery and mystique going into this final saga. The way I thought it would go down is that this is it. Oda's ready to reveal all of the mystery cookies he's been hoarding in the story jar, and that Yamato would be a good vehicle for that. But if we're not prepared to give out all of the delicious cookies, then having Yamato on the crew is a bad idea, because it's just going to become really difficult to explain why Yamato can't tell them everything that was in the journal. So looking at this the kindest way I can, I would say that both Yamato and Momonosuke have a bit of a mutual understanding from this journal, an understanding that they can't actually tell the Straw Hats what was in there for various fate-related reasons. Although I think it would have been really cool to have a scene where Momo and Yamato offered to tell Luffy everything, but him just flat out refusing, because it's not about saving the world and such, it's about Luffy making the most of his fun, goofy adventure. So yeah, I don't know, there's a couple of weird things about this arc ending that maybe doesn't feel like Oda's A-game, and we're not even done there because I do have a couple of other things. But first, something I really loved is that Yamato didn't join, but we more or less recruited 3 more Straw Hats in one go, because we've left Kinemon, Momonosuke, and Yamato as honorary crew members, just as we left Vivi and Karoo on Alabasta. And the more I think about it from that angle, the more satisfied I become with it, because if there are any 2 characters in the series who deserve that honorary position, it is Kinemon and Momonosuke. These 2 have been traveling with us for approximately 10 years of real-world time. The entire New World era has largely been playing out with them in the center of this storm. They've helped out on Punk Hazard, Dressrosa, Zoe, and of course Wano, and the crew owe them so much in terms of making progress towards the ultimate goal of finding the One Piece. And I do feel like whenever we get to whatever the final fight is, all 3 of them are going to be on board along with Vivi and Karoo, just to have that final full composition of Straw Hats. Momonosuke breaking down in tears was also quite touching though, especially after all of the angry talk with Kinemon. It gave me exactly what I wanted from this here Big Momo, which was to express that he's still a child, but without falling back on his pervy character quirk. And I love that as soon as it happened, Kinemon just face palms like, oh. We've got a long way to go. Nami and Zoro's reactions are also worth mentioning here as a nice juxtaposition. Nami has the more proud mother in tears happening, oh, my child, he's good. While Zoro has the more casually, oh, my child, how embarrassing, lol. You know, as if he's never bowed down and poured his heart out to anyone. And if he were to do it, it certainly wouldn't be in front of his greatest rival, that's for sure. The scene where Luffy gave Momo the Straw Hat Jolly Roger gave me some real chills though, because the last time he did something similar was with Fishman Island, and back then, Luffy was honestly a rookie talking out of his rubber butthole and really picking a fight that he had no chance of winning at that point. But now Luffy really feels like he has the authority to do something like this. One of the set in stone 4 emperors who everyone in this world is going to think defeated Kaido one-on-one. And when I think about it like that, Wano feels pretty damn safe. And it makes me really proud of just how much Luffy and the crew have grown. Because when he did that on Fishman Island, I distinctly remember saying to myself, I mean, yeah, those are great words and all, Mr. Rubberman, but if any reasonable power wanted to take Fishman Island, then there's probably nothing that you could have done. And of course, another reason why I love it is because we just hit another slot of our 2022 bingo. Luffy didn't literally claim that Wano was his, but what happened is still exactly in the spirit of that. Luffy put his mark on Wano as a warning to anyone with a desire to F around, but not necessarily a desire to find out. And that is also far from the only one we hit this chapter, because Act 3 of Wano is now over, but so is the arc as a whole. So we are getting very, very close to a bingo. Or a bing, as you all insist, because it only has 4. Although I should say I've decided not to claim the new Straw Hat slot, because when we wrote that, I think we all meant that we'd have a new core Straw Hat coming aboard the ship, and we don't, so that will remain blank. But yeah, Wano is over, and that's surprisingly difficult to process. This arc is it's unlike anything else. Even comparing it with other mega arcs as apples to some sort of nut fruit. For those of us reading weekly the whole time, we've spent just over 4 years of our lives following this one arc. And there's a theory in psychology that generally people experience enough mental and environmental growth to become completely different people every 5 years or so. And I definitely feel that. When Wano started, I was a very different person. I also feel fairly confident in saying that this will be one of a kind. I highly doubt that we will ever see a single arc as long as Wano again. So in terms of long-form storytelling, this is probably the peak of Mount to length. But it's also so gigantic that it's going to take a lot of time to process. I mean, right now, Acts 1 and 2 to me feel like completely different arcs due to how long ago they happened. One feature I quite liked about this ending, though, was spending the time telling the story of Wano to all of the Wano people, because it acted as a bookend to when we first arrived on the island, and all of the school kidlets were learning about the greatness of Lord Orochi and the evil Kozuki clan. But actually, just on that, there was a part that kind of weirded me out, and it was the line that the Kurozumi were born to burn, because why? For as thick of a bungle nut as he was, Orochi did actually start his life out as an innocent victim. His grandfather was a power-hungry dude bruh who rightfully should have been punished for his horrendous crimes, but after that, the rest of the Kurozumi clan were mercilessly hunted and most quite successfully murdered, including the children. That is a really dark part of Wano's history, and it kind of doesn't sit well with me that we're just doubling down on that. Like, Orochi was not born evil. His existence is more like the sins of the Kozuki clan, manifesting and punishing them for all of the aforementioned child murder. And Kanjuro is another example of this. He was a poor child whose parents were murdered, and so he became a blank canvas of hate, ready and willing to paint an indiscriminate massacre of Wano. Like something dark, super dark, happened on Wano. And it happened whilst our heroes, the Kozuki clan, were in charge and overseeing it all. So I'm not so on board with the simplicity of just continuing the Kurozumi prejudice here, because that means that we really haven't learned anything from history, and these mistakes are destined to be repeated again. Maybe not with the Kurozumi clan specifically, but the general attitude goes beyond just them. Also, hi, this is Future Liam coming to you from a time where I've already finished editing this video. Look at how glorious it is. Parsley, I'm pretty jealous. But I am here for a reason, and it's because I have a bit of an addendum on the whole Orochi thing, because apparently a native Japanese speaker on the Reddit has confirmed that this line doesn't sound as bad in Japanese because it's a pun, and it's quite clear that Hiyori is speaking solely about Orochi as opposed to the whole Kurozumi clan. Although this user did go on to state that even in Japanese, and this is a direct quote, the line apparently still sounds a bit, quote, Hitler-esque. But there we go. Back to the actual story of Wano's salvation, though. Oda did something kinda cool here, because the story began with the raging storm and the vassals standing at the port. And I thought that was a really great decision, because in our fictional reality of those events, that's when the vassals thought that the story was going to end. Yet they were determined to face off against Kaido anyway, but at that point, they'd lost any hope of thinking that they could actually win. So it's nice to use that as a launching point to victory. And it was also quite satisfying to see Toko playing alongside Hiyori for the final curtain of Act 3. Oh, and also seeing Hiyori play without her mask. That's a pretty big thing with all sorts of wanky symbolism attached, like a return to normalcy, finally being able to be yourself, and all of that sort of fluff. And there's even a close-up of the mask sitting stationary by her side to emphasize just that. Plus, my favorite panel of the chapter was the group shot of Momonosuke and the vassals. It almost felt like the end of a JoJo part, where you see that collage of all of the major characters and it makes you go, what a splendid journey we've all been on. Also, I missed this the first time around, but we get to see Ryan Kaizo. That was important because he was also sucked dry by Ryokugyu, but it looks like he didn't have the same side effects as Shinobu, as he remains his chonky ninja self, which I could not be more happy about. Do not touch my chonk ninja. He's perfect as is. And sadly, the time has come for our worst generation trio to part ways. Although I'm incredibly happy that they couldn't even set sail without being complete and utter children, very much mimicking their contest with Big Mom's fireballs. And then the moment where all three of them realize they've made a huge mistake was so great because you can read all of their faces perfectly. Especially Luffy's expression, which is just something like, "Ah, I never expected taking the unsafe option would result in danger." But yeah, I'm really going to miss this trio. I think that Luffy, Law, and Kid have an even more fun dynamic than Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro. I said Sanji before Zoro. That's treasonous. Although I'm very excited to be taking a break from Law and Kid. Not that I don't like them, but because it means they get to go off, evolve, and come back down the line better than ever. With that said, this might not be the very last we see of them. There could be a brief section in the next chapter where they actually part ways, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we just cut to a completely different part of the world entirely. And that's also why I don't want to put too much stock into seeing the Big Mom pirates again, because given that we're headed down the waterfall, it would be fairly natural to encounter them, because that's where they've spent the last 4 years of our real world time. So I'm hoping that they'll be sailing up the waterfall again just in time to be knocked down by our worst generation ships. I mean, great comedy, it comes in threes, and I think it would make my life to see the Big Mom pirates fall down that waterfall one more time. But personally, I just feel exhausted in the best possible way. Even though the end of Wano has clearly been rapidly approaching, this chapter was still a huge exhale for me. To think that we finally completed this journey is just insane. There's just been so much I've loved about Wano, too much to name individually, really. With that said, there's also been some things that I'm not so fond of, quite a few of them in this chapter actually. And I also can't deny the feeling that this whole ending has been a bit abrupt and rushed. However, with such a massive chunk of story, it's going to be important to give it time to breathe. And I'm really looking forward to rereading Wano and being able to get some perspective on how it all works together when you're not forced to break up your reading over the course of 200 weeks. So there will definitely be look, I don't want to call it a review, but I guess a retrospective on Wano coming up. But for now, we are looking forward, because the final saga of One Piece begins next week. But while we wait for that, here is another video. It's good, perhaps even great, and I look forward to seeing you there.